You've heard it already. On Saturday, October 7th, the Jewish people suffered the greatest loss of life in one day since the Holocaust. Think about that. Let the tragedy and the horror of it sink in. Now, consider it from a different point of view. If there is any silver lining to the horror of the past 10 days, it's how Jews in Israel and around the world have bonded together in solidarity when confronted by a common enemy hideous beyond imagination. Faced with unprovoked terror, senseless violence, orphaned children, traumatized survivors, kidnapped hostages, and atrocities so brutal that they defy explanation or understanding, Jews turn to one another with generosity, compassion, kindness, selflessness, and self-sacrifice, driving away the darkness of monstrous evil with the light of brotherhood and solidarity. Literally overnight, all the ideological labels and political agendas that threatened to tear apart the Jews as a people and Israel as a nation became forgotten and irrelevant. Whether religious or irreligious, right-wing or left-wing, European or Mediterranean, suddenly there was only one kind of Jew, the kind that our enemies want to destroy. The sages have long taught that unity is the wellspring of our strength and division is the source of our vulnerability. It's a lesson we've been trying to learn for countless generations. The first attempted genocide perpetrated against the Jews occurred nearly 2,500 years ago when Haman, viceroy of the Persian Empire, convinced King Ahasuerus that the Jews were a threat, a liability, and, most significantly, vulnerable to attack. Listen to his words. There is a certain people, scattered and divided among the peoples of all the provinces in your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of every other people. Neither do they follow the king's laws, nor do they provide any benefit so that the king should suffer them. The thrust of Haman's argument was that the Jews, because they were scattered and divided, would offer no defense against a campaign of annihilation. If the Jews were not unified among themselves, how could they offer any meaningful resistance when faced with a final solution? And if they were seen as a nation apart, no other people would come to their aid. According to reports, a captured Hamas official disclosed that terrorist leaders were convinced to move forward with their plot when they saw news footage of Israeli citizens embattled against one another as they protested in the streets. If the Jews are fighting with each other, they reasoned, Israel won't be able to mount an effective defense against a Palestinian assault. They were right. And they were wrong. Our divisions indeed left us vulnerable, but in that moment of vulnerability, we recovered our commitment to one another and our collective awareness of who we truly are. No one can take that away from us as long as we preserve it among ourselves. And see how the nations of the world have rallied to our defense. This is not merely a message for or about the Jews. Here in America and around the world, look at our political houses, our Congresses, our parliaments. Look at our community of nations. Look at how the disintegration of fundamental principles and universal truths is pitting us against each other and tearing our world apart. Look at the verbal and physical violence justified by vilification of those who don't think, look, or act the way we do. We don't have to agree on everything, and we shouldn't have to suppress our opinions. But we do have to treat others with respect and human dignity while seeking common ground and recognizing that we cannot survive scattered and divided. As long as we remain committed to one another and to the values of truth, justice, and loving kindness, we will prevail. As long as we remember that we are all one, the enemies of all that is good and right will scatter before us, not just now, but forever.